What's the wildest courtroom decision you've ever heard of? I was working as a law clerk for a judge when we had a case involving a woman suing her neighbor for $500,000. Her claim? That the roots from his tree had damaged her house's foundation and caused one side to sink. At first glance, her case looked pretty solid. Her house was visibly tilting, and an arborist she hired testified that the roots had spread from his yard into hers. There were diagrams, photos, and expert statements. It looked bad for the neighbor. The defendant was a 78-year-old retired teacher living on a fixed income. He couldn't afford a lawyer, so he represented himself. He sat quietly for most of the trial, scribbling notes in a little spiral notebook. Everyone in the courtroom felt for him. If he lost, he'd be wiped out financially. Meanwhile, the woman came in with fire. Her lawyer had that kind of smugness you can't teach. Smiling to himself, leaning back like he was already planning how he'd spend the contingency payout. For 3 straight days, they hammered away with engineers, soil analysts, and even a real estate agent who talked about how the house had lost value because of the damage. It was a well-constructed case. The old man, though, didn't get rattled. When it was finally his turn to speak, he slowly walked up to the bench carrying a small, worn photo album. He asked the judge for permission to approach. The judge nodded. The man opened the album and placed it on the bench. We couldn't see what was in it, but I remember the judge's expression changing almost instantly. His eyes narrowed as he flipped through the photos. After about a minute, he closed the album, looked up and said, "Both parties, Chambers, now." They disappeared for about 20 minutes. When they returned, everyone looked confused. The judge took his seat again and immediately said, "Case dismissed. Plaintiff is ordered to pay the defendant's court costs." Stunned silence. You could have heard a pin drop. The woman looked blindsided. Her lawyer's face turned beet red. He started to protest, but the judge cut him off. After court wrapped up, I asked the judge what the old man had shown him. He handed me the photo album. Inside were pictures going back more than 30 years. Dated Polaroids, faded prints, even some snapshots from disposable cameras. The same house in every one. Same angle, same visible tilt. Turns out, the house had always been like that, built crooked. The woman had purchased it as is years earlier, and at a significant discount, specifically because of the existing foundation issue. The root damage? Minimal. Nowhere near what they claim. It was just her attempt to get someone else, her elderly neighbor, to foot the bill for something she knew she was already stuck with. But the real kicker was one photo in the middle of the album, a picture of the "for sale" sign in the front yard. Handwritten words on it that said, "Sold as is. Foundation settled. Date stamped. Plain as day." Nestled right between older and newer photos of the same house, all showing the exact same tilt. That's what sealed it. The judge looked at me afterward and said, "Sometimes the truth doesn't need a team of experts, just a photo album and someone who's been paying attention."